Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is the
Walaikum.
Wellness Show, and I'm Angela.
And I'm Safiya. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So today our topic continues on from last week's subject when I had my friend, Suzanne, the doula, the birth worker, who was telling us all about her profession and all different types of experiences she's had, as well as we talked about pregnancy, before pregnancy, and the options that pregnant women have to give birth, and afterwards a little bit. So today we thought that me and Safiya thought, since in between us we have birthed let's say 11 children. We
Indeed.
have plenty of experience to have a continuous discussion about it, and hopefully you'll find it interesting.
Yes, indeed. We have quite a bit of experience, and again, it's quite interesting. This is why we wanted to continue a bit on the discussion, because it was really interesting to hear it from her point of view as a professional. She's obviously also a mom, but it kind of reminded us about all of the different experiences we've had, and also the fact that no two births, pregnancies, labor are the same children. So although we can kind of read things about labor and advice and everything, you realize basically when the first contractions start, that's it. You're completely in the unknown. You have no idea whatsoever what will happen. And I'll give you an example. There was a friend of mine, a local, she's a young woman. She was pregnant with her third child, third girl. So you think, okay, she's done it twice in a particular way, going quite well, not too long, etc. And it's again a girl, so it will probably about the same. So the third one generally gets a little easier, etc. Well, lo and behold, it went completely the other way around. And why? Simply because the baby had the head tilted and therefore could not go through the birth canal, and was getting stuck at the hip bone, so the pelvis bone. So basically, eventually, after like over 12 hours of labor, they had to say, will you in the theater to have a C-section. So there you go. Alhamdulillah, both mom and daughter are fine and healthy. And this is, if you read any documentation about any advice about any sort of labor you would like to have, the answer and the end, the conclusion is always just keep your mind open. Whatever you planned might not necessarily happen, and generally you can't implement all of the things you wish to have, but
I think
the outcome that you want to have,
who always thinks we are in control, and if you plan everything, it's going to turn out exactly as you want. Birth is one of the times when you realize, if you think about it, you really do not.
Yeah. The outcome you want, Angela, ultimately is a healthy mom, a healthy baby.
But if they do goes your way, it was just a fluke and not because you planned it right.
Okay, yes. However, remember, she did say that there are some things you can do. So when we say she, I meant obviously Suzanne, the doula, last week. She did say that you can really improve your chances of having a smoother delivery if you have really good preparation and support. Emotional support, not necessarily physical.
I mean, a midwife, not a midwife, a doula is part of
or
that,
a friend.
The plan, or
again,
a friend.
Yeah, again, in the case of this friend who gave birth, she asked an older member of the local community to come and help, just who she knows very well, like an auntie kind of figure, to come and help her. And I told my friend, I said, listen, you can have a whole new career if you want to, because you have the right mentality, you're compassionate, you're dedicated, you're kind of available, you dropped everything just for that that labor and that woman, and you know, you can make money now. You can do it professionally. So it's true, because we don't really think about this. It's like us doing a lot of informal counseling throughout our lives as women. It's a natural thing we do, you know. Well, you could do it professionally if you wanted. So yeah, we thought it would be nice to go through certain things a little bit more in details, because you know, many new mothers, newly married women out there who would like to, maybe, you know, who are pregnant or would like to conceive, and it's nice to be prepared.
It is nice to be prepared. When I reflect back on my experiences, which were six experience of birth, from the first to the last was totally different in terms of how my mental state was, my mental preparation, and how I was feeling as a person. Like the first time, I was 19. I had no family with me. I had no partner there. I didn't even know I was going in labor when my waters broke. I thought something was happening to me. Like I was like, there was water coming. I'm thinking, what is this? And I had to, the only thing going for me at the time was books. I had books, and I went through my books, and I looked through the books, and the book was saying this, this, and this. And then I called somebody to tell them what's happening, and then they told me, oh, you have to call the ambulance. I had no so different experience.
So really, for that labor, that's quite interesting. Did you go through antenatal classes? Did you speak to a midwife before? Did you have any information from them?
Nope, I didn't. The only thing I had was books that I had bought from the library, and I read about it, but I had never experienced somebody having birth in my circle before, because that's just not
You were quite young, yeah.
Yeah, but even there was no one in my family at the time that I was around that had
And
a
a
pregnant, a birth,
professional
or professional. I had no experience whatsoever in any shape or form. Even seeing a baby for the first time was my baby. I was never in the vicinity of a baby
Wow.
until I had my own baby. I
And
didn't know what
then,
to do with a baby.
yeah, but
Didn't
you
know
had
what,
mother
except
instinct.
for my books.
But you had something, I think, though, a natural mother instinct. There's a few things I'm sure you kind of just happened, and you were surprised yourself, a bit like me, surprised yourself. Oh, actually, feels very natural to do that. And other things, whoa, what am I supposed to do here? Because I'm quite lost.
Yeah, changing diapers, never had changed a diaper before.
Mm.
Nursing, it didn't go very well because I didn't know what I was doing, and I had no support. And at that time, all my births were in Canada, so at that
So that's
time,
why let's go back to the pregnancy then, because the way it is. So how many years was that ago? 30 years ago? 30
yeah,
odd
in
years
the
ago.
80s, late 80s.
So how was that something that in Canada you didn't have? You didn't have antenatal classes at in those times, or
We did have,
yourself,
but
you didn't
I
know?
was in a
You were not
very
offered?
peculiar situation.
Oh,
My family had disowned me. I had just gotten married, but it was a very dysfunctional relationship.
but I'm
So,
talking about the professionals.
but the
When you went to
professional,
when you went, presumably at some point you went to your doctor to say you were pregnant, or to get some tests done, or to register that you were you know, at the hospital, that you were going to give birth at some point, etc. I mean, this is how the process here in the UK works.
the only thing I had was going to my doctor for appointments. If there were any classes, I didn't attend, possibly because I've had to
You couldn't.
physically go there, and I couldn't get to them.
Mm.
And the nurse, after I had the baby, the nurse that was given to me to come to see me after the birth, she's never had any births. She's never had any children. So she was teaching nursing, breastfeeding, whatever, from a clinical point of view, or her own experience. She never had nursed before. So I was getting information from her as a nurse, and then conflicting information from a mother who had nursed, but she was encouraging me to give the baby bottles of water with glucose.
Wow.
So it was it was gonna fail, the nursing, because I didn't know what I was doing. right?
So, all right, okay. So to go back to the labor, say, what do you want to tell us about that?
That means if you're alone and you're a young person, you do need to have support. People should
Yeah.
keep an eye on them, because they don't know what, they might not know what they're doing. They need help, emotional side. They might be in a bad relationship. They need help. You
And
can't
also
just,
young, you everything. It's as you say, if you nowadays, you know, this is why we quite candidly here talking about our labors and stuff. If there's anyone young who's listening and maybe does not have extended family or access to other information, because when you hear the stories, you okay, so what's happening is normal. The way my body's reacting now is normal. The pain I'm feeling now is normal, and you know, it's natural, and my body knows what to do, and that's
the good
helpful
thing
and
now,
reassuring.
you had, most of us have access to online, but I'm pretty
Very
sure
true.
there's probably people who do not, right? We're not going to assume just because we have something, everybody else has it.
True.
But there's still books, they're still online, and there's a lot of places nowadays where you can just walk in and get some help.
I
You
mean,
don't have to
exactly.
go it alone.
The way it works here in Britain is basically you get, you know, you find out you're pregnant. Either you just know you are, or you take a test. Generally, the doctors ask you. Then you go to your GP to say, you know, I'm pregnant. They ask you, have you done your test? It looks a bit like a COVID test. Now we have to work to say that the other way around. We used to say the COVID test looked like a pregnancy test. Now we just anyway. So if no one has seen a pregnancy test, it's very similar to, but it uses basically you use a urine sample to find out about the hormonal level in your. So you've got a high level of growth hormone in your urine sample, which is recognized in that little test, and therefore that proves that you're pregnant. You can have negative tests more likely than you can have a positive, false positive. Generally, if it's positive, it is positive, but it can sometimes say you're negative, you're not when you are. It's just too early days. They're quite sensitive now, so you get your confirmation you are. So you go to your GP. Your GP registers you as a pregnant woman, and therefore you are straight away then given advice on what to do. I think I remember probably, yeah, I got leaflets at the time, you know, in the early 2000s. It was still kind of leaflets, and you're registered with the community midwife, who you see every month. So every month you see a midwife. She tests, you know,
Yeah.
checks your,
Sounds similar to how it goes in Canada.
yeah, you check your blood pressure, how you are, your glucose, whatever, just to see if there's any sign of you becoming diabetic from you know, gestational diabetes, whether you have other issues, maybe signs of preeclampsia towards the end, you know, kind of if you're generally healthy or not. But they also do, I remember they do ask you, you know, what's your situation, you know, you know, are you with a partner? Is the father present? Do you have other children? All of this, that they start gathering a bit information about your social situation, so they are prepared if there's anything. And also we discussed it with Suzanne, didn't we, about the social factors of a good outcome in pregnancy and birth. So if you're in a precarious situation, or if there's any issues that they should be aware of to help you.
They've come a long way since the 80s, both in Canada and here, I'm
Of
sure.
course, yeah, definitely. So I personally felt always very, very well supported, and the fact that you see a midwife rather than a doctor, it removes a bit the medical side of things. You talk more about the process, the you know, the progression of the pregnancy itself, rather than seeing it as an illness. I remember my dad saying straight away, he said, remember, you are not ill. You're pregnant. It's not an illness.
That's a great thing for your dad to say. That's pretty
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
advanced of him, because for decades, two women were treated like they were sick, and highly medicated for everything,
Yeah.
from
I mean,
nausea
as
to
As an aside, I'm reading a lot of books set in Tudor times in Britain, so that's 16th century, 15th, late 15th, early 16th, and in those times, when they were a month from giving birth, they would go into confinement. And confinement didn't mean you were, yeah, they were, especially with the rich women, you know, and the royalties, they would, you know, obviously they would be pampered and everything. But it meant closing all the curtains, being in darkness,
Wow.
all in all, for 3 or 4 months, because it was a month before birth. And I think, I can't remember if it's a month, 6 weeks, or 2 months after birth. And
Wow.
then they were cleansed, and that they were allowed to go out and they could not see any men. So their husbands, their father, no one could see them apart, just women. I can see the idea behind it. When you're in that state, you know, towards the end, you naturally, women who listen and who have been pregnant, they remember that stage where you reach the end of the pregnancy and you feel like you have that nesting feeling. You start pottering around, tidying up. You've got this urge to make things look neat and clean and tidy and cozy and things. It's because you're preparing for the birth to be comfortable, like a cat does, you know, or a bird does, or whoever, you know, they all do. But you also no, yeah, so you go through that instinct of preparing everything. So there's a benefit to it, to have confinement. In a sense, you've got, like, if you're a rich person, obviously you would have all your household around you, your maids, your things, and you didn't have anything to do, but in total darkness.
Why though? What was the mindset?
The idea was that the light was going to damage the baby.
No, but
Something really weird.
that part doesn't sound good, because that sounds unhealthy. No sun, no
Exactly.
movement. It
No
makes
movement,
pregnancy
no
even
sun.
more
Mm.
unhealthy, like not moving around and
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. And they were confined in, you know, a couple of rooms. So it was really, really hard, actually. Yeah, they could not even open the curtains to peep out. Imagine, for 2 months, 3 months. It's
Maybe
bad.
they were preparing them for in case they died or something, and nobody, I don't know.
I really don't know. I'm sure if we did maybe a bit of research, some historian may have found the reason why somewhere, that they explained why they thought certain things. But obviously, you know, things have moved on. But having said that, we do in Islam particularly, but in it's not just Islam. It's a lot of communities around the world have got this tradition of keeping the woman in confinement after the birth, but not locked up. But in fact,
No.
that basically she's supported, she's fed. All she has to do is to feed the baby. Everything
Yeah.
else taken care of. And I know, for instance, in Malaysia, they're very strict about this.
I don't know.
They had
Pakistani
Malaysian
community
friends.
also, they're very strict, Indian community, and
They were not like,
the
I
Greek
remember my
Orthodox
Malaysian friend.
community, they also believe in that, because I remember
Yeah.
being told by my uncle about it.
Yeah, no, my Malaysian friends, I remember, because in London I was sharing a house with Malaysians, and so that's why I mentioned them. But I'm sure, yeah, it happens elsewhere. That basically they had to they were not allowed to go out at all. Again, this idea was like, don't go out, don't, yeah. And it's just, when it's a bit extreme, you feel like, okay, but I suppose if you have a garden, you can still go into your garden. It was more kind of take your time to rest, because this is what happened on my 4th birth, which, alhamdulillah, we can go into details a bit later, what, you know, how the process of the different labors, but this one was a home birth at last, alhamdulillah. But it was my 4th, and I had 3 young ones, and my mother-in-law came to help me out straight after the birth, to, you know, to cook and take care of the little ones, keep them entertained. And after a week, I think I said, I'm okay now if you want to go back home, because my father-in-law was on his own. And she went back. And after a week or so, I had to call her back, because I could feel that all my body, all my organs were going down. You know, starting to have a collapse. because I was on my feet all day long. I couldn't rest. I couldn't, you know, lie down and let everything heal. And I had to call her back. I said, I am in trouble here. Please come back. And alhamdulillah, lovely support. My mum would have done that as well. She just basically, my mother-in-law was local, and local in Britain. In England, my mother was in France and still working. Yeah, it's you have to listen to your body. There are reasons why traditionally you have confinement, because yes, at the end of the labor as well, at the end of the pregnancy, you know, all your ligaments, your tendons, everything, your joints are very loose because the baby is very heavy, but also it's getting ready for labor. So all of the hormones in your body are being sent, to loosen all of your ligaments. So obviously when you're kind of forced to be in confinement, you're basically forced to rest. You're forced to take it easy, because if you do too much, you risk causing a lot of issues to yourself that you'll struggle to recover from after birth, but also you can cause issues to your baby. There is issue with the placenta being misplaced, or moving too much, the baby gets, you know, the cord around the neck, and etc. So there is some logic behind all this, we shouldn't forget. So but we wanted to move on a little bit more precisely as to sort of our experience as mothers and what happened to us. And we touched a little bit on the fact that we had, you and I, Angela, different experiences, because you were very young on your first one. You were 19, but I was a 31-year-old.
That's quite a difference.
Mother for my first one. That's when I became a mother. So nearly 31. Yeah. So very, very, very different. And around me, I had already, my sister-in-law had 2 children. My brother had 2, and had in a house in London for a couple of years with Somali sisters. Yes, I know, I've mentioned my Malaysian flatmates, but it was big house, very mixed, Malaysian and Somalis.
Wow, you've had quite a bit.
And one of them was a single mom. Well, single mom. She was divorced. So she had a young baby, and so I had her experience and the baby around. But that was really my first exposure to living with a baby, to be honest. So it was quite interesting. But it's very different when it's your own. But I found, actually, just an aside, when my son was handed over to me, and the first one, all of them, but the first one was like the realization that if that baby was going to cry, I was the only one to be able to soothe him in a way. You know, if I was successful, not always successful, but I was the person that the baby would be handed over to if there was a problem. And I felt that was just such an amazing feeling.
Wow. You at least had that realization, which I did not have that. I did not know what to expect at all. At all, like nothing. Just don't know. I don't know nothing about babies.
It's amazing. This is why you have so much respect for me, because it's just amazing. But it shows as well that we have a lot of instinct. You said you had a lot of books. That's useful, very useful. But also we have to trust our instinct.
Parents, basically.
Yeah.
If you do this is what's going to happen. This is this, that I'm thinking, what?
Yeah. But also, you know, even with parents, when I compare maybe to my mother's experience of giving birth to my older brother and myself, that was in the 1968, 1970. Very, very, very different to what was done by 2000 in England. Very different. Much less medicalized. And here in Britain, they really encourage you to be natural, not like not have any epidural or anything. No, not necessarily that, but like to really trust that your body knows what to do.
I think we come full circle, haven't we? Almost. Yeah. We're getting there, but
yeah. So when I became pregnant with my first child, you still really didn't have a lot of information on the internet. It wasn't like the way it is now with YouTube, with everything. Had, you know, blogs, website, they didn't exist. So I came across, probably in a parenting magazine, I came across a natural parenting, I think I had a magazine a friend of mine had subscribed me to as a gift. There was a DVD you could order, which was about natural birth. I can't remember what it was called. And I discovered a whole world I had no idea of, which is, you know, how to prepare your body to have a natural birth. And a lot of it had to do with visualization. And you had a technique to visualize when the contractions were coming, imagine there were waves coming and going, because they really do physically feel like waves. There's an incremental until that it peaks to especially towards the end when it's virtually unbearable, but you know that's the peak, and it's going to crash again and go away. It really is what amazed me was that it was very painful. Yes, it is very painful, but because it is for something positive most of the time, unless sadly, you know, you know you're giving birth to a child, a baby that's already dead, which can happen most of the time. Let's talk about normal circumstances. You are in that process for something positive, which is to give birth to another being. So to hold on to this was really, really useful for me to bear the pain, thinking, yes, okay, this is a process. Having said that, I have to specify, my pain threshold is very, very low. I really do feel pain easily. So it's not like I'm some sort of superhuman, you know, who's like, oh yeah, nothing really faced. No, not like that. And so that really amazed me that I was able to withstand that process without any help at all from any drugs, or so I didn't even have gas and air, because
for me, it was a whole process so different from what you're saying.
Yeah,
You were already mature at 31 when you had your first baby. I was not. I was still basically just came out of
yeah,
So the first two for me were whatever they told me to do, I did. I had no idea information outside from what I was being told. So whatever they told me, I did. You give the baby glucose with water, you give the baby glucose with water, you put the baby in the crib and let the baby cry, don't sleep with the baby. Everything they told me, I followed to the limit. Exactly. Even for the birth, I had epidurals, and back then I was nice and slim. I could curl up and take it to the back where they put the thing in, and I was totally like paralyzed and had no control over my limbs. But I did everything they told me. And then there was a gap between the second child and the third child. And in those 5 years, I grew a lot. So the third child was born around the time I was 27. In those 5 years, I had read more books. I had met, women who, the La Leche League. La Leche League was an organization, a mother-to-mother organization that helps you with breastfeeding. Read books from them. And then I felt more empowered, found out about midwives, found out about sleeping with a baby, found out all kinds of stuff. And I said, okay, now when I have my third child, I'm ready for another baby. Like, I didn't know, but I was ready. And then the third child, he was the most challenging, but I was more mature and I did things 100% differently.
Yeah.
So
And this
mentally, I
is
was
it.
prepared.
Yeah, it's the knowledge. So to go back on epidural, for me, I was adamant I was going to have, I was preparing for the most natural labor I could have. So no gas and air, no epidural, nothing, just the warm hands of my husband's hand on my lower back, just for a bit of support and warmth, and that's all I could bear. But we tried the birthing stool, I tried the bath, all of the, and in the end, it was such a long labor for 36 hours, and the actual pushing stage was like 2 hours. I was absolutely exhausted. But by then, my husband said, look, you know, the midwife said you really need to get him out, because he was a bit small, and the blood pressure was dropping each time at the contraction. He was getting tired as well. and that you need to get him out, because otherwise we'll have to start intervening. So unfortunately, I had an episiotomy, which is when they do incision to open a little bit more, twice, once without injection, without anesthetics, local anesthetic, because it had to be an emergency a bit. I was like, I remember skis, but she's cutting myself. She's cutting me, you know, and it was like, really felt like I was being a bit butchered, but there was no choice. He said, you do it naturally now, or we'll have to, there's going to be serious. And I just made a dua. I said, oh Allah, just to help me. And this expression that, you know, came to me, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, there's no power, no might, but with Allah. And all of a sudden I had this surge of energy. And you know, this is what I say about the human body has resources you never think it has, and it's very mental as well. If you tell yourself, I must do it, there's no other choice, get the baby out. And then all of a sudden I had that extra 30% energy that I don't know where it's coming from Allah.
Well, from Allah, you made a dua,
and it came out. Yeah. And I let go. I said, okay, I have to stop holding. I think I was also, because I didn't know what to expect, and it was already very painful. I was so tired, you know, 236 hours with little sleep, you know, it is tough.
Even without a birth, you would feel like you're being tortured.
Yeah, exactly. And in the end, yeah. And I was a bit worried, I think, that what would happen when it comes out. And actually it was such a relief. It's a delivery, you delivered from the pain as well. So, and then he was born. So alhamdulillah, and he was all healthy and fine. So the second one, I was a little bit more clued on. It was a little bit faster. There were other issues, you know, with cord around the neck and everything. But I knew more about how, you know, the process of things. And I knew what to expect, which was a bit scarier. But at the same time, I also knew that the outcome with the relief, the delivery, you know, once the head is out, that's it, it's done. And also, you know, things like that. It's very empowering to have knowledge. When you know, when we call, mothers who have given birth will know the ring of fire, which is when it's fully dilated and the baby's crowning, the head is nearly coming out. There's this ring of, it's called the ring of fire. This is when all the sensor, the little cap sort of sensors all around the skin, nerves, send message to the brain to ask for more endorphin. So that pain is actually necessary to have less pain. It's amazing, isn't it? It's like you press a button, you know, you press a button to get more drug in your body. Well, that's what the body does naturally.
Yeah.
And it does work. It's just amazing. So I just wanted to say something about epidural. I personally did not want to get any because I had read that when, and it's known, studies show that when you have an epidural, it goes to a certain extent, a little bit through the placenta. So the baby is less active during the birth because the baby helps with the delivery as well. It's active in the delivery, helps a little bit because it's a bit more sleepy. But also once the baby's born, the baby is less likely to be able to nurse properly. And that's probably maybe why you had some issues because it's more sleepy. It takes about, if I'm not wrong, 24 hours, 12, 24, 36 hours for all of that drugs to leave the baby. So it's more sleepy, less likely to feed well. Therefore, you're more likely to not have a very successful beginning of nursing. It doesn't mean it never happens, you know, but it's just a bit hard at the beginning. And also, it increases the risks of intervention from the medical staff, like forceps, ventouses to pull the baby out, forceps, and even C-section. So once you know this, you could, you know, start by saying, okay, I'm going to try and have a natural birth as much as possible. There's always as much as possible, because there's a point where, as I said at the beginning of the show with my friend, you can plan things, but you don't know how things go. The baby's in the wrong position, the head is blocking, can't go out, the baby's not positioning himself or herself properly. And you have to have a C-section, or you have to have something. Just be ready. But also, I remember it's very good to have a good relationship with your midwife, even if it's not a midwife you worked with to prepare, but to have like a birth plan. They like you to come with a birth plan because they know where your head's at.
Yes.
Do you care about any of this or not? Do you want any of this or not? Do you? And therefore they say, if you say you want to have a natural birth, they will support you up until the moment they think there's a problem and they need to take over. So if you've got a good relationship with them and say, this is my hope, this is what my ideal, I want to have the Quran played in the background, I want to have all of the lights dimmed, I want to be in virtual darkness for most of the labor, I don't want any epidural or any gas and air, nothing. I just want my lavender oil to calm me. I want to be able to eat my dates.
What a plan. I had no idea any of those things when I was having my...
You know, they said they don't like you to eat. They don't want you to have like a full meal or something because you might throw up and all of that. You do throw up even without food, by the way. That's normal. But, you know, it just makes things harder. But dates, they're great because dates is glucose. It gives you energy. Whatever you want, you know, you can ask those things. I want to have a birthing ball to help me I want to move around. I want to do this. I want to hang this. I want to, as long as it's kind of something that can accommodate, they will. Up until the moment there is something where they have to say, hold on a minute, we need to come and help. We need to come and intervene.
Because it's not that it's funny that all the stuff that I didn't know when I was going through my births, and that sounds like, wow, that's like a plan. I had no idea that you could do all this. Plus it has come a long way from back then. When was your last birth? When did you have your last baby?
2008.
Okay, mine was 2004. Not a big difference, and mine was in Canada. You were here. Still, they're pretty. I think in the UK they are a bit. They've had the idea of having a midwife, but a medicated, like a medicalized midwife, like more like a nurse here longer. Whereas in Canada, the midwives just came into working with the hospitals and training midwives and integrating them into the system. Early 2000s, like I can't know the exact date, but late 90s. Like up to that time, you only had nurses and obstetricians at the hospital, and midwives were something separate completely, and they might come with you to the hospital, and then you had to pay them yourself. But then after things changed a little bit in Ontario, then they became part of and they started training them. The Ontario Midwife Association, they started training midwives and doing it. There was a course, so they were allowed to be there instead of.
That's interesting because they sounded like they were more like doulas before.
Yeah, but they were there. You could have the births at home, but you had to pay for all of that. It was separate. But in the UK, even back then, they had midwives. But midwives were like at the hospital. They weren't the ones that you had in Ontario where you could have the pay them separately and they could handle any birth. But after they became more legalized, then they had more rules of what kind of births they can attend before, and how, you know, they had more rules of before you could have a midwife if you could pay for it at home, whatever the circumstances, I believe. Suzanne might know better. But afterwards, they had rules. So if this happens or this happened, you cannot have a birth. You have to bring the mother to the hospital. This is what you can do. This is what you can do. And afterwards, the obstetrician will take over. If, like, say it's a twin birth, if the baby comes before the 36th week, like rules like that. After they included midwives into the system, then it was more like how the UK thing, I guess. I don't know the ins and outs, but before
I think it's interesting because one of the thing that made a big difference, my husband was of amazing support, but a man is a man, okay? And also, so in terms of like empathy to pain, they might not be able to completely comprehend what goes on. If it's a first dad, he'll be worried. Anyway, first, fourth, 10th birth, you as a father and caring partner, you worry. So they might not be able to be completely there. But also there's a natural, I know some dads actually don't even want to attend. It's just culturally, it's not something they do. but also they just would not be able to take it, and that has to be respected as well. You know, all the choices. You shouldn't throw a tantrum if your husband says, I really can't attend, I really, you know, because it can happen. Just respect that as well, because it can be traumatic. And also to see your wife in all of this. Some husband of partners have been traumatized seeing their wives you know, being in that situation, and have struggled to see them afterwards as you know, partners in bed, because they just can't forget about that image. So you have to be respectful to your partners, but most of the time, you know, your partner is there, and he can help and support you, and, you know, give you a bit of water, give you, you know, hold your hand, or you can squeeze their hand so hard that actually hurt them, dig your nails into them, whatever you want to do. But I had my sister-in-law with me as well, so his younger sister, who'd already attended her older sister's two birth and friends' births as well, although she'd never had children herself yet. She was really oh, she was amazing, because she kept that cool head. She knew what I wanted. She was very supportive, and she was there to keep me counting, breathing, focused, not give up. She was just like a coach, you know, like a proper sports coach. It was just
Now we're going to talk about a bit of our own home birth experience, inshallah. So I'll be polite and let Safiya go first.
I was going to say, why don't you go first, Angela? Because you had
Okay,
it before
I've
me.
had 2 home births. You can and you had how many? One?
Just one.
Just
Yeah.
one? I don't know. Let's I don't mind talking about mine first.
Go ahead.
The one that before my last child, that I had attempted to have a midwife by the 4th child, but he was born before the cutoff date of having a home birth at 36 weeks. So we had to transfer to the hospital, which was good because he had inhaled some meconium and had to be in the hospital for more than a week in the little in the little jar they keep babies in. Incubator, right? Jar.
Jar.
I make up words, don't I?
It looks a bit like like an aquarium, or
and after that, I had another attempt at having a home birth at my 5th child, and it was successful. The midwife came the night before. She stayed overnight. She was sleeping sitting up, and I had my friends over. My sister had come. The kids were there. I was trying to like make it as wholesome as possible. Not everybody was happy with that idea. It was like a new idea that hardly ever anyone had heard of in my circle, in my family, in my circle, anything. So I was breaking barriers. I don't know. Anyways, so the midwife was there, but it was such an easy birth. Like I went to the
mashallah.
bathroom, alhamdulillah. I went to you guys, we call it washroom. So I went to the washroom, got up, got to go leave the bathroom. Next thing you know, I feel like something is happening. I'm calling my midwife, and she had a look, and I was standing. The baby had crowned, and so she brought in a towel, and he fell out.
Wow.
Talk about quick. I didn't
That
have
is
to do anything.
amazing.
That was the
Yeah.
easiest, alhamdulillah.
So basically what you said, like this feeling when you know something's happening, it's this urge to bear down. It's so heavy. You feel like, and it's really just, you feel like it's really ready to come out. There's nothing, your whole body's taken over. You cannot resist it. And when midwives tell you, just wait, you know, whatever, you can't. And this is when in films, you know, sometimes they say, oh, you see them panting for so long, and you're like, oh, come on. You only pant if you need, when the baby's heads come out, and they need to give a couple of seconds time for the shoulders to turn, so they are sideways and they come out more easily.
Also,
that's the only time.
They always show women in bed. Being in bed is one of the worst places to try and give birth, even though that's what's happening to most of us.
Yeah.
But so that's what
So
happened.
it is, let's explain why. Because when you lie down, you're pressing on the coccyx bone. The coccyx bone is a kind of a little it's a moving pointy bone at the very, very end of your spine. And so when you're lying down, it's kind of pressed, it's like a flap, and it goes up towards your inside. So therefore I don't know how to explain this. He basically is pressing against and is stopping the opening. Yeah, that's it. The whole pelvis needs to move and open, and therefore you have this coccyx bone pressing against and not opening. So you can lose about 25% of the capacity of opening your pelvis, the actual bone structure, to let the head out. So it actually can slow down things. And there's no real reason why. I think it was made, some say it was because one of the French kings, Louis something, maybe 14th or 16th, can't remember, wanted to see his wife give birth. That could be potentially one of the reasons it became popular, because obviously then people imitate what the celebrities and royals do, thinking they're good things. But also because of the increasing medicalized process, it's easier for midwives to see what's happening and to doctors to see what's happening. But they do say now much more, try and be turned around, crouching, squatting, on your knees, find positions where basically gravity works and there's nothing stopping your body from opening properly to get the baby out.
That's what happened with my number 5, alhamdulillah. It was like that.
And number 6?
It was at home. It was amazing how I could walk straight afterwards, no medication. But even
and surrounded, nice.
3 and 4 who weren't home births but were with midwives, I still didn't get any medication. After my second child, and after everything I read, I had decided no medication for me, because after the birth, right straight after the birth, as soon as it's possible, you can stand up and you're feeling your legs, and you can get back to as normal as quickly as possible.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you recover a lot quicker.
And the nursing was, I was able to get into nursing better with a number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. No medication. So I pretty much decided on what I wanted to do, and alhamdulillah, it went almost according to plan, except for number 4, who had to be going to the hospital. Number 3, I had a lot of home birth. At that point, I was still, scared a bit of the situation of that process. But number 5 and 6 were home births, and it was one of the best things I ever did. Like I love.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, I agree. I mean, when I was pregnant with my first one, we were thinking of how, of maybe exploring the idea of a home birth. But it was my first. I had no idea what would happen. I was really nervous, and I said, look, I think I prefer to be in a maternity ward, just relaxed, and I felt a lot more safe, and I had good it was in North London. I was well surrounded with good midwives, so it went as nice. But it was because it was such a long birth, as I explained earlier, I eventually gave birth during the daytime. It was very bright, and since then I kind of found out it's better if you can. Most births actually naturally happen at night, because more hormones to help with labor are produced at night. So it's kind of a natural process. All of it it's all in tune with what happens in your environment. So after that, yes, I had dimmed lights. But with my second one, again, I was hoping for a home birth, but our circumstances had changed. We were living with my in-laws, and we were sharing, we had one bedroom with our firstborn in there, and he was only 16 months, so it was just not possible. So went into the same hospital, and it was good, it was fine. But they do say, and I felt it happening, that when you move from home, you're starting your labor and you move from home to hospital, change of environment, medical environment, not as comfortable, maybe bright lights, maybe you don't get everything you want, it might be noisy. The labor often stalls for a while in a hospital, and it is
makes
true.
sense. It makes total sense now that we know what we know.
And it is hard to move when you're in labor with the contractions. They're so powerful that they really does sort of cut your legs. You really cannot walk. You have to wait. But you know, it worked. Third one, we again wanted a home birth, and everything was, this time we were determined, and we were in Manchester, and we were determined we're going to have a home birth. Got everything ready with the midwife, and they had this cutoff point, as you mentioned. If you start contracting less than 38 weeks before, so they don't allow you to, or 37 weeks maybe, they don't allow you to have them.
Or 37.
Or 36 weeks, you're right, yeah, 4 weeks before they don't let you, and if it's 2 weeks after your due date, they don't let you either.
Yeah.
And they let me to go as far as I could, and yeah, that one was, I already gave, the first 2 were a bit earlier than the due date, a week and a half, nearly 2 weeks, I think, or 10 days and 1 week. Whereas this one was showing no sign of wanting to come, apart from mild contractions every evening, and nothing that they did, sweep and everything, were membrane sweep, were helping. So I reached my 42 cutoff point, and all the forums, you know, I was part of natural forums and so on. They said, don't listen to them. You can go until 43, 44, 45 weeks, let your body speak, etc. I wasn't particularly worried myself, to be honest. I could feel everything was fine. But they were worried that the baby was going to get too big. And I did my own little calculation. I thought, okay, I had those children at that time in, you know, 48 weeks and 38 weeks and 39 weeks. They were that weight. Now add a little extra because this is my third one. Okay, I'm going to estimate it's going to be about that, you know, nothing too big, but a bit bigger. And lo and behold, I was bang on that. I was right. And their estimate was much bigger. And I knew it was not going to happen. I don't have big babies. So I could have forced it, but circumstances again made it that my parents were here. They were, you know, helping out with the boys, the first 2. So I thought, okay, I'll go into hospital and have him there. And the third one came very quickly, because I had to be induced, because she was 42, you know, I was 42 weeks into that. So it was really fast, and that was a bit hard because the body didn't have time to gradually produce the endorphins naturally that were needed, because there was a gradual progression. It went from no pain to wow, massive pain, like nearly 100%. So that was tough, but it was a lot faster. So instead of being like 12 hours, or certainly not 36 hours, but 12, 14 hours, it was 3 hours or something. But it was less long. I had more energy. I was able to choose my positions a lot better, so I was not lying down in bed. So that also helped. So all the positive, you know, the virtuous circle, that was good. And the fourth one, that said, we were like, that's it. We're not taking any. We are having a home birth. And this time it worked. So one of the things I went, again, I had all my little utensils, like little equipment, my essential oils, the Quran. It was in winter. We had a nice fire on. We were watching a movie together when this contraction started, because that's one of the recommendations. Try and keep your mind off things. We delayed until very late before we called the midwife. Poor her. She had to rush here. By the time she arrived, I was virtually ready to give birth. But I knew by then, I knew my body, I knew what was going on. So I just told the midwife, you don't need to. I was not speaking so calmly and relaxed, by the way. I was like, no, don't touch me, don't do anything. You don't need to assess, you know, how, you know, what stage I am. I know where I am at. I'm going to give birth right now. And lo and behold, few pushes and the baby was out. It was fantastic. The boys were at friend's house because I didn't want to have I wanted my own space. And the third one was still very young, 2 years old, so she was asleep. She woke up when I went back to bed with a new baby, and she had breakfast with us at 4 a.m. or something. So it was really, really relaxing, very, very pleasant. And he's very chilled. So is it because he's number 4? He's the last one? Is it because it's his personality? Is it because a combination of things because he had a very relaxing birth?
Also, he's the youngest. You're more relaxed. You've been there, done that. You don't have
Number
not as
2,
strict as the
yeah.
first kids.
Number 2 had a difficult birth, and he had the cord around his neck and stuff. Was it because he was very agitated in my tummy, or was it because he became quite tense because he had a bit of a traumatic birth? You know, it's a case of chicken and egg, isn't it? It's a mixture of both. You do what you can, and then Allah has control about the rest, and there's a reason for everything. So
everything happens for a reason. I wish we'd remember that, because we would less stress, less. Of course, even when we make our choices, our tests, I think, are based on that anyways, but that I digress.
So to finish off, we thought it would be nice to just go through where, you know, Angela, we do like to give tips at the end of the show, don't we? So we touched, just to summarize, basically, because we mentioned everything throughout the show that are useful to do. But first thing is to make a plan with you, with your doctor, your midwife. Generally in England, in the UK, it's a midwife who takes care of your birth plan, of your birth preparation. So it really helps to have something written down that they can go through. But I always tell my friends when we talk about preparation for birth, it's like, have a plan, but remember, Allah's the best of planners. You're not necessarily going to get the labor and the birth you want. Be open, don't be stiff, be open with, you know, their suggestions. Ultimately, you've only had your own few births, you have that experience and you know yourself, yes, but they've seen thousands of births and they have that sort of level of medical expertise. They can see signs that you can't see. But also talk to your midwife as you go through the labor, because it helped when my second son was stuck, or had a cord around his neck. I told her, I said, I feel he's stuck. And she can't see, but she knows, she can see signs, everything. But me saying this, she knew already something was going to be a bit tricky. So she had the team ready, pediatrician, etc. As soon as he was born, and they were ready just in case something, I would have to be had a you know, cesarean. So you have to be open to these things, but be firm if you think that they're not supporting you, you know, as much as they should.
Well, I'm only going to say, sorry, are you?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The only tips I'm going to say is what helped me at first was I think you should read stuff.
Yeah.
Especially definitely. If you don't have experienced people you trust around you, read. Now we can go online, there's videos, there's blogs. You need to work on your mindset, especially if you're surrounded with issues, if things are not ideal, if your situation is like your social situation is not the perfect situation. You need to get yourself into a mindset, know that you're not sick, that you can do this, your body's built for it, but sometimes our mindset gets in the way.
Oh yes, the fear
There's no point in me giving tips on a good healthy diet and all of that, because that goes without saying, but some people just can't do it because of their social situation, because that's exactly what affects you and when you're having the birth. And if you have to do it alone, well, for our Muslim audience, we can say that, remember, you're never alone. Read your du'as and try to keep yourself as positive, because
and you're not alone, even in you know, in the medical, you know, in giving birth, unless it's a super fast birth and you give birth at home, which happens.
When I mean alone, I mean
but generally,
if you're not emotional, somebody's not there with you, right? You can still do it. So that's my
yeah, absolutely. Remember the story of Mother Isa alayhi salam. Maryam, she gave birth all on her own. And I remember I remember thinking about that story. She did it on her own. Absolutely. And she, you know, there's no shame in being scared. She was scared. She thought she was, I mean, thought she was alone in some terms, like, you know, and she wished she was just, you know, not in that situation. She really did. And so yeah, you have those stories. You can hold on
And
to.
that reminds me, if you can have dates is the best food.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you said, yeah, definitely prepare mentally, as you said, it's a very important. The more you know, the more prepared you are, the better it'll happen, inshallah. And then you can learn about natural pain management. So go online, do some research, talk to midwives, especially in England, because that's where, you know, the knowledge we are based, so we know more. But they do have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge now, and they do help you. You have breathing techniques, you have massage, essential oils, as I mentioned, meditation. Some people use hypnosis as well. Hypnosis, music therapy, taking a warm bath or shower, walking around. Virtual reality is listed as well in some of the sort of documents
Nowadays,
we found.
we have way more
Virtual
tools at our
reality, you can
hands.
now immerse yourself in maybe the place that you may be in, using different positions that could be beneficial to you. So and also, you know, and the painkillers, if that's the route you want to take, research about the different painkillers and see which ones you'd be happier with. So, you know, we will say, yes, natural childbirth hurts. Any childbirth will hurt, because even if you're a bit numbed, when the numbness disappears, a bit like having a tooth extracted, you do feel, you know, something's happened. You do feel a bit battered and bruised. It's like a marathon. It is been, in terms of the effort required to give birth, is equivalent to several marathons, actually. So it's not trifle. But one thing that helped me tremendously is to remember to be very positive and to absolutely be convinced that my body knew what it had to do, and to surrender a bit, to not try and control everything, not try and think about everything. Oh, I should do this, should do that. Actually listen, just let you switch off a bit your brain there and just be in tune with your body. Your body will tell you, and it will do it naturally. And by the fourth one, yeah, I definitely had reached that point where it was just natural. And in fact, baby just turned completely naturally. I had to do nothing, just the midwife had to do nothing, just the baby turned naturally to be able to be fully born. So yeah, the body's an amazing thing. So, and also, just that's a final positive thing to say is, remember, there's no wrong way to give birth. Okay, whatever happened and whatever you choose, you've just given birth, and ultimately you're healthy, baby's healthy, then alhamdulillah, everybody's happy. Angela, do you want to say anything else to conclude?
No, I just love all our stories together. Everybody's story is different, and your story will be a good story to keep to tell your children.
Yes, I love listening to their birth story on their birthday.
It's a good thing having a baby, and no matter what the circumstances, keep your spirits up and welcome the baby in a very, very happy way.
Yes, inshallah, it is a blessing, and sometimes it is a difficulty. You feel it's a difficulty, you feel it's a struggle because of your circumstances, but we also say, remember, every child brings its own blessing, his or her own blessings.
True.
So even if you are in a tricky situation, whether it's marital, financial, situational, just remember that baby will bring his or her own blessing. So trust in Allah and be confident that there's a reason why that baby was born.
True. MashaAllah. I'm really glad we did this show. Hopefully it will be help to someone. Now we'll finish. And if you want to hear it again, please remember to go to our YouTube channel in a couple of weeks.
Wellness with Angela and Safiya, and on Spotify too. Most of our show, not all our shows on Spotify, but most of our shows are there as well, if you prefer the podcast format. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
This was the Wellness Show with Angela and Safiya, and we're looking forward to continuing on another topic next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.